Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Theater Resources Unlimited. It's our true community gathering. That means it's Friday at 5:30. We actually start at 5, but those of you who are joining us on YouTube, you missed the first half hour where we kind of have a community and we talk to each other and we find out who everybody is and we see what everybody's up to. So you may want to join us at some point live when we're doing this. Um, so this is week 116. 116 consecutive weeks of conversations. Because heck, what else do you do during a shutdown? On April 17th, I kind of was guided to Zoom, and because I didn't have any other way of doing my programs and serving the community. So we tried to do a Friday gathering, and it's been happening every week. And we get a very healthy, robust community of artists who come in now for 2 years, 2.5 years. 2.5 years? Oh my goodness.
Crazy.
So 2.5 years of this, and we've talked about podcasts, we've talked about Zoom, we've talked about if it's on Zoom, is it still theater? We've talked about virtual versus live. We've talked about radio plays. We've talked about God knows what. We've talked about marketing. We've talked about anything and everything we could think of to talk about. Not randomly. I mean, a lot of it was just things that people really were very passionate about and wanted to know about. So we've been here every week, and I've tried to bring in interesting speakers and make this not only a community, but also a place to learn, which is sort of true to our mission. Theater Resources Unlimited, we're a company that was founded by 3 playwrights to help producers, go figure. But we, myself, Gary Hughes, and Cheryl Davis, my vice president, we're all writers who thought that producers might benefit from support. So 28 years ago, 29 years ago, we started this, and we've kind of expanded and we've kind of grown exponentially at this point. And we offer programs that were originally designed to help people be producers, but we also came to realize that everybody in the business really needs to understand the business. So our programs really support artists as well as producers. We have lots of writers, lots of directors, lots of actors, and we have programs that are geared to each of them. So we do a whole lot. Go to the website trueonline.org, and you'll see all the things that we're up to, including our first live performance on July 25th. We're doing a reading of a new play. So today we're going to continue a conversation that we've been having.
And you know, Bob, I really love you because normally Fridays at 5, I'm on the racquetball court. So.
Oh, okay. So, guys, you're seeing a preview of my guests. Toni and Cherine I'm gonna introduce you formally. But first, I wanna just say that this is a continuation. This is a continuation of a conversation we've had a couple times over the past 2.5 years. And the past 2.5 years have been notable not simply for Corona. Corona has sort of dominated us. But a lot of other stuff's been going on, and I think because we were in shutdown, we were able to notice a lot more, and we were able to process a lot more than we have in the past. We saw a lot of horrible things happen in the world, and enough happened that it really forced a Black Lives Matter open voice of protest that finally had to be listened to. So. We also saw, we see you white help me with this. We see you white American theater.
White American theater.
Yeah, white American theater. In the wake of the shooting of George Floyd and the shooting of Breonna Taylor and so many other people, and the just insanity that was going on that we couldn't look away from because we were here, we're sitting in shut down, and we had to take note of it. People started really making a different kind of effort to get inclusion and diversity really recognized and owned by our industry. tiny little steps have been taken over the years. It was time for big steps. And the result of that, combined with shutdown, combined with the weird world that we were in and the weird situation that theater and Broadway itself was in, led to 7 Black voices being heard on Broadway. More than 7, but 7 new plays. And most of them had Black dominant producing teams. So it's a whole new thing. The question is, will the Jello stick to the wall? Is basically the question. It's like, here we are. We're very proud of the steps we've taken. I'm going to bring in Toni and Cherine now. I'm going to go out of speaker view, and you're going to see us in gallery view now. And Toni Isreal and Cherine Anderson are my guests, and they're very much on the front lines of the change that's been going on in the past year, specifically on Broadway. But I know that you've also worked in other areas. We don't have to focus just on Broadway, but it is worth noting. It's impossible not to notice that finally a significant number of Black voices were heard this year in commercial theater. That's the good news. The bad news is it was a time when audiences were very difficult to get into seats, which was, guys, that was your job, and boy, it must have been some work. Why don't we start a little bit by talking about who you are and what your backgrounds are. Cherine, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to move to Toni, and we're going to talk about RealEmN Productions.
Sure. So thank you, Bob, for having us. It's great to see you again, and the rest of the team, some folks I recognize. But so my background before I even entered into theater was marketing for MTV, Nickelodeon, specifically for, on the consumer and affiliate marketing side. And then I was there for about 10 years. And then when I left, actually, I went to another network called Imagination TV. And it was during my stint at Imagination TV, we had an event at the US Open where I met 2 gentlemen at the time who were working on the first Color Purple. And, we were chatting and they were like, hey, we're looking for somebody who's really tied into the African-American community. So how tied are you? And I said, I think I'm pretty tied in. And I rattled off my credentials. At the time I was president of an organization called NAMIC, National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, they're like, okay, well, let's talk after the Open. So after the Open, I met with the lead producer. It was Scott Sanders, who was the lead producer of the first Color Purple in 2008. And that's how I got my start in the world of marketing for theater, which was, quite interesting. I mean, I come from television. And so usually same thing, sometimes you're the only African-American in the room around the table, and everybody doesn't necessarily look like you, but they look to you for, opinions that may, relate to, the African-American race. So, that was the case with the Color Purple, my first experience working on a Broadway show. And, through that, Toni and I met because we both worked with a woman named, I'm sure she's well known in this room, Donna Walker-Kuhn. She found, I still to this day don't know how she found me, but she found me somehow when she was working on Thurgood. And
Cherine, I want to draw a line under something that you said.
Sure.
There you were coming into a very high profile Black musical, The Color Purple, with white producers, which is so often been the case. And you said that you were the only Black voice in the room. I just want to underline that. I want to make note of that because I want to come back and say, I want to ask you whether things have changed. And to what degree? So just to note that.
Okay,
you go
sure.
on. You go
I mean,
on.
I can answer that question, but I'll wait till you come back to it.
We'll get to. I also want you to know that Donna Walker-Kuhn was one of my first speakers at True many years ago. I won't say how many years ago. And she is the one that opened my eyes to the difference in the marketplace for audiences of color versus the white audience. And she's the one who, as everybody I think who knows her knows the phrase. She's the one who knows how to welcome you to the party. She's the invitation to the party girl. Party girl. Well, I don't know, maybe that too.
That was the first book that she wrote, An Invitation to the
party.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I owe a real debt to Donna Walker Kuhn. She's somebody that influenced me.
I think we all do. We all do. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's how Toni and I met when, you know, as I said, Donna found me. She tracked me down to work to just ask me some questions about, at the time, that was, I can't remember, 2008. I had done some unique, it's not unique anymore, but back then it was considered unique things that I did with the color purple. So she wanted to find out what I did. So I just, you know, said, yeah, sure. So I just told her, and she said to me, she said, you know what, I have to tell you, most people would say to me, I'll tell you what I did, but how much are you going to pay me? And I never said that to her. And so, you know, she was like, hey, you know, and so she sort of, you know, I guess that was obviously a great thing because she really admired that. And then she tapped me to come on board and work with her on various, you know, shows that she was doing at the time. So that's how Toni and I met, you know, through Donna. And as years evolved, you know, Toni, you know, Donna wanted to sort of move away and do some other things, not so much heavily into theater, but, you know, more she's focused now on writing her second book that she's going to be having come out and some other things. And so Toni decided to, you know, start her own company, RealEmN Productions. And she and I, she said, hey, you want to come with me to do RealEmN? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? It's been a fun ride so far. And that's how Toni and I are now working together on RealEmN. But we have a big team. So I'm sure Toni will.
Yeah, Toni will.
Yeah, so
because this is the segue to Toni.
This is the segue, yeah.
So Toni, because the last time I had you on a panel, there was no such thing as RealEmN Productions.
Always been a such thing as RealEmN Productions, but we didn't come into the forefront. We were always under Donna Walker Kuhn at Walker Communications. Always had RealEmN Productions. I'll tell you a little bit about that story.
Sure.
But Donna said always keep RealEmN Productions. So again, what Cherine just so eloquently put, when Donna wanted to step down, RealEmN came forth. So it started.
Okay, so and when exactly, when did that transition happen?
Okay, so I'll come into my story. Cherine said a lot, but I come from a biopharmaceutical background in accounting. Very different than marketing, but I got my start into theater through my mom at a young early age. My mom introduced me to Broadway. Fell in love with Broadway. I always tell the story, that's when Broadway chose me. Never thought I would come back full circle and come into it full steam, but my mom planted the seed with me probably at the age of 8 or 9, took me to my first Broadway show and I fell in love with it. So circled back. So my start came from church, different organizations. We always brought people to Broadway. So that's where RealEmN Productions had first started. We started out as taking people to Broadway in groups. That's where RealEmN Productions started. Our first show that we brought people to is where Cherine and I first intertwined, is through Color Purple. We brought 6 to 10 buses to Broadway to see the show. So it was already in me to do group sales and audience development. I took a course, I'm just going to fast track the story. I took a course in Commercial Theater Institute, and that's where I met Donna. Donna was on the panel talking about marketing. Came up to her, introduced myself. Donna hired me as an intern. That's what started my full circle moment as far as meeting.
On the spot?
On the spot.
Wow.
On the spot. And that is how I met Donna Walker Kuhn. And then that's where I met Cherine. RealEmN Productions was always there doing something, but I came under Donna's wing. She is really, she was instrumental in honing my skills. Started out there as an intern, then went to an assistant, went to associate. When I finished with Donna, I was the marketing director. And then Donna wanted to, you know, again, transition out. RealEmN Productions came in. We're now a company of 16 strong. So Donna introduced us, of course, to the world of marketing, BIPOC emphasis. We call her the OG of BIPOC marketing. We now, RealEmN does community engagement, audience development, group sales, social, digital, and we have 2 publicists under our team, and Cherine is our director of media relations. We're 16 strong now.
So what I want to ask you a lot of things, but let's
Sure.
start with the simple, less controversial questions.
Okay.
How did shutdown affect you and your business? What was your response when we went into shutdown? And then I want to talk about how things have changed and evolved in the past 2.5 years.
So when the shutdown happened, we were working on Hadestown, Broadway. Hadestown was one of the most talked about, biggest musicals that were out there, winner of 7 Tony Awards, and then the world started to shut down. During the time of that shutdown, we did a lot of writing for Hadestown. They were one of the shows that wanted to get the Black voice right. When they wanted to talk about what was happening in the world, we were the ones that talked with the PR team, we talked with the social team, and we were helping them craft the language from a Black point of view. So we were doing a lot of writing during that time. In that time, we did a lot of writing for a lot of shows. Truth be told, I won't mention the shows because we were behind the scenes. So we stayed busy during the pandemic, believe it or not.
You did, okay. I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
When did you get wind of the fact that something was changing? At least for now, it was changing in terms of what was being brought into Broadway and who was bringing it in.
We got firsthand because we were talking with a lot of lead producers. A lot of lead producers was reaching out to agencies like RealEmN Productions because they wanted to get the voice correct. So we were very fortunate in that time. We grew within the pandemic. Not many companies can say that. We went from
We did.
Cherine. Yeah, we did. We went from 4 to 7 to 10 to 16 very quickly because we had so much work.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I think because too, you know, a lot of the shows when the time was, they were obviously preparing to come back, you know, after the shutdown, but they're also preparing to come back in the right way, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a particular show, I don't want to necessarily say the name, but there was a particular show where, you know, there was some diversity in the cast, but they really weren't really reaching out to the diverse audience to come and see the show. And so, you know, that was one of the shows that really tapped us to say, you know what, you know, we have a diverse cast. It's not your, you know, your typical, because it was not an African-American show per se, but they had a diverse cast. And so they really wanted more, you know, of a diverse audience to come and see the,
and all of our wheels are spinning right now trying to figure out which one it was.
Yeah, there were a lot of shows that did tap us again that, you know, they wanted us for our diversity. Hadestown really did open up the market for us because we weren't just advertising or marketing to Black folks. We were doing Latinx, we were doing Asian, we were doing Filipino. So it opened up our scope. So a lot of folks wanted that from us because we had the expertise behind it.
Well, that's interesting. A question I wouldn't have expected to ask, but have you discovered any differences in the Asian market versus the BIPOC market versus the normal white Broadway market?
I will say this in a very strategic way. They're all different. Some of those communities do stick together a little bit more. And when you reach out to them, they do come in droves and they do come in groups. So if you tap them authentically, they do respond. And I use that word wisely, and I would say authentically. We don't just use them for a one-off. You know, we want to be in communion with them. We want to have a conversation with them. We want to reach out to the community and we want to be right there, whether that be restaurants, whether that be panels or things like that. We want the relationship with them, and that's very important.
I know.
And
I remember that the Asian market, everybody expected to get support for the revival of Flower Drum Song a while ago, and also Bombay Dreams. They thought that the ethnic groups would come, and they didn't. That did not happen on Broadway at all.
Well, you know, I mean, I think it's about sort of going back to what Toni said. It's about how you reach them, right? So for us, when we did Hadestown, we advertised in particular papers that community would reach, whether it's, RealEmN or the Asian Journal. But in the advertisement, we made sure that, to put forth the character that would resonate with that community. So for example, obviously, Hadestown Eva, who is of a Filipino and Mexican background, who's also one of the leads in the show, we made sure that the advertisement that she was definitely put out, put forth front and center in the advertisement. So when they're open up that paper, they're seeing someone that they can relate to. So I think that's also key. Whatever
Absolutely.
you reach their community, you can't just slap an ad. You got to make sure creating the ad that's going to resonate with the community that you're trying to reach.
Right. And another thing that we did also, Bob, even with like the Latinx, when we reached out to the Latinx communities, we made sure that we translated all the words into Spanish. So we were very conscious of that in reaching those communities. We wanted to make that, authentic, that we wanted a relationship with them. It wasn't just a one-off.
Okay. So let me ask you a little bit of the tough kind of question. In the past, we've always had little bursts of enthusiasm for diversity on Broadway, or diversity in general in theater. And a lot of people actually had the illusion that theater was a very inclusive business. I mean, people really believed that for years. Can you talk about how that changed during shutdown and during the Black Lives Matter movement?
So I'm going to make this statement first. Broadway is definitely perceived to be all-inclusive because you see more of the diversity on the stage. What we were advocating for is to see it now behind the scenes, to see it in power, to see it in producing, to see it in the casting, to see it in the dressers, to see it everywhere. That's what we're calling for, to really have people of color in the decision-making. That's what we want to see.
So you're not at the color purple table and being the only Black person in the room.
Yeah, there's still some times where you might be the only Black person in the room, but you might get two now.
Okay, two. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's just keeping it 100 real. Yeah.
Okay. So there's work to be done, and that's the other part of the conversation that I wanted to I wanted to address is the fact that we're not necessarily there now, but how hopeful are you, or how cynical are you? I mean, you can be honest. Normally it would just be the room, but we're going to YouTube, so I guess you may have to.
Yeah, I will say this, and I know Cherine wants to jump in this too. There's definitely steps that we're moving in the right direction. We're talking about 2020, and this is just 22, so it's going to take some time. But we are trying. It's moving in that direction, and then sometimes it's not moving in that direction. You do see more people of color as far as being producers, lead producers. It's still not, it's not a large number, but it's a jump. Before it might have been 4. I think we have now 6 Cherine lead producers of color, Black lead producers.
We had black. Okay, lead producers. This is different.
Lead producers.
We had 7 Black producers working on Broadway regularly. Pre-COVID, so now we have people that are they're now taking the lead, which is the difference.
And
but
I
think
it's
still the same 7 people.
Still the same set of people, and there's a few more. And RealEmN has put their hat in that ring now too. So we want to be part of that conversation too.
And Janelle Scarborough on my board, who just had to leave to go to a rehearsal for Greenwood, she also has become a little bit more involved in the producing side of theater.
Yeah. And I think because of that, I was just going to say, because there's an organization now called TPA, Theater Producers of Color. So I was in the inaugural class last year. This year they had their second class, and that obviously is an organization that is trying to train and bring on board and educate folks who want to enter into the producing space. So it's called TPOC, theater producers of color. So I think, from everything that has happened, a lot of different organizations and institutions have sort of pop up, like a TPOC, like a Black Theater United, BTU, right? They're focused on, getting people in who are like stage managers. And
we had Adam Hindman on, and he's part of Broadway for Racial Justice. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And Adam and I are part of TISG, which is the industry standard group. That's 8 of us who are forming a coalition right now. It's going to be focused on promoting work reflecting diversity and increasing BIPOC folks and investors and producers in commercial field. So, there's a lot of different organizations that's out there, and TISG is one of them too.
Let's tell everybody the productions that you've been working on in the past year and a half, the past season.
Yeah, sure.
And
Cherine, I think
they were on Broadway and off Broadway. Have you also been involved in any regional?
Yes, okay, we have some regional.
Give us the full spectrum.
Okay, so I would have been prepared. So Cherine, let's see if we can bring this back. We have Passover, we have Chicken and Biscuits.
Passover, just if you don't know, was the first of the plays to open the Broadway season, the current Broadway season.
Yeah.
And I think was Chicken and Biscuits. I think Chicken and Biscuits was second, if I'm not mistaken. So again, in that time frame, we were really busy. We were working on a lot of different productions. So again, Passover, Chicken and Biscuits, Hadestown, MJ. I'm missing something.
A lot of Morissette play I just blanked. Jagged Little Pill.
Jagged Little Pill.
That was pre-pandemic. So you were still involved with that.
Yeah, we came.
Well, we came in in 2020.
Yeah.
2022, I guess. With Jagged.
That was 22. Wait a minute, we'll find the list for you. Give us 1 quick second. I would have been prepared if you was going to.
No. Don't worry. I mean, this is just a casual conversation. I just want people to get an idea.
But those are some of the shows that we work on. Plus, we also do, work with New York Theater Workshop. Then, of course,
we just had a big change. They did Jim Nicola finally left after like a century.
Yeah. And then
Apollo Theater.
But also the New Jersey theaters as well. MacArthur Theater, George Street Playhouse, right?
Let me ask you
George Street Playhouse and Crossroads.
Where have you been? What have been the easiest places to draw diverse audiences? And have there been any situations where you were working at cross purposes with the producing teams or they weren't understanding? Which were the harder ones for you? Which were the ones that were just like the audiences love this? They're just tell them it's here and they'll come.
Cherine, I would say the easiest probably was Chicken and Biscuits. The audience, just because it was a fun show. There was a lot of, church groups. It was a very churchy type play.
And it had Norm Lewis, so what's not to like?
That's true. That's true.
But it opened at a time where, of course, audiences were timid about coming to a show, right? Because it was still new.
Well, let's go back to that because we said that Passover and possibly Chicken and Biscuits would. I know Passover was the first show to open the season. Chicken and Biscuits may have been second. It may have been very early, and that was the hardest time for audiences. Yeah. That was. I don't know who thought that they're going to open the doors and audiences were going to rip off their masks and come running, but it was tough. It was a tough time to open.
It was. It was a tough time. Passover was one. I love the writing for Passover. Antoinette is brilliant. It was a hard audience to cultivate because of the show and the tone of the show. People just didn't know how to perceive it. We did go after, Cherine, correct me if I'm wrong, we went after a lot of youth groups for that, just because it was about two young Black African-American men. So we went that way as far as marketing. which did work. But like you said, in that time, with COVID, there was a lot of people very apprehensive as far as coming back into the theater. You had everybody in face masks, people didn't know what to expect. It was the whole face mask etiquette, I'll say. And then, it was everything with the COVID protocol. So it was a tough time to bring audiences in.
I want to address something else that's related to that. I want to keep this conversation going, but
sure.
The thing about COVID, because about Passover, which you didn't actually state, it's waiting for Godot interpreted in a Black environment and a Black sensibility with reference to the Jewish Passover. It was a complex piece. This addresses another issue, nothing to do with diversity. It has to do with off-Broadway. It's a piece that I might be wrong, but it's a piece that might have had a better life off-Broadway if there were such a thing as off-Broadway anymore. Have you any thoughts about whether some of the pieces that opened and didn't do as well, other than the COVID problem, maybe it's because we're in a funny kind of place in New York in general, because off-Broadway used to be the place for so many small shows, small, unusual, unconventional shows, and now everything has to be done on Broadway because there is no profit margin off-Broadway anymore.
Right.
I think Passover though had a run at Lincoln Center. If I'm wrong, Tony, correct me, but I think
in the small theater in the Mitzi Newhouse.
Yeah, before it came to the Broadway house. And speaking of Lincoln Center, before we forget, Skin of Her Teeth was another one of our shows that we did. Yeah, at that. But I think Passover may have had a run back in, it might have been 2018 or 2017 at Lincoln Center prior to coming to Broadway. But
yeah, I know that it had some success regionally. I wasn't sure. I guess you that kind of rings a bell. I'm sure you're right.
I also think this is a theory of mine, and this is only a Toni theory. Passover being the first Broadway show to come back on Broadway, and with the content of Passover, I think, I'm not gonna say it was the shock value, but I think it had to do with the content of the play itself, and what was going to be that first play to come back on Broadway after this whole awakening that we had in 2020. For that to be the first one, I think it was a statement. That's my personal view on it.
So we have this
awakening. Why it came to Broadway.
So we have this awakening, and I think that most of us in theater are on board with it. And yet, and down in Florida, and down around the other places in the country, we have voter suppression, and we have white fragility. It's like, oh no, don't say slavery. That makes me feel uncomfortable. Well, how do you think it made the slaves feel? So, is New York and is theater able to be a dam against this flood of white supremacy that's going through the country? What do you think? Do you think we have a purpose and a place in our culture right now? Hopefully an important one.
I think it's an important one. Oh, thank you, Jane. Jane said superhero, but we forgot superhero.
Oh,
so
yes.
Everybody's putting in the chat some of the shows that we worked on. So thank you, Jane. And
also Little Girl Blue, right?
Little Girl Blue. Yes.
I was waiting for that one.
Little Girl Blue. Let me see. How can I answer that?
I told you it's going to be some tough questions.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'll say this. In this time, right now, with Broadway, I do feel the content that's brought on Broadway, and also what is happening in America right now, should meet in some way. But we know Broadway is all about what sells. We know Broadway is all about money. It's all about dollars. the average person that sees the Broadway show, we know who that is and what that is. We're trying to make changes with that to bring more representation on stage that reflects the population. Going to contents, we know revivals, you know, some do work, some don't. When you have more, I'll say this, I'm gonna come to this. If you have more producers of color that can bring in new works from people of color, I think that will even out the playing field a little bit. But when you have, and I'm just gonna put it out there, when you have more white producers, they control the narrative of what's being brought out there. So it won't change as fast until we have more people of color and producers that can bring out different materials.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm True has been actually supporting the development of new producers of color for 20 years.
And I think when you asked that question, my mind actually immediately went to the two plays that came out this year that Alice Childress wrote. Right, one came to Broadway, Trouble in Mind.
Yeah.
And the other one was performed at Theater for New Audiences in Brooklyn, the wedding band, which we actually also and so that those were two plays that were written way back when, but finally she got her due this year, as they say, for the two shows. I saw them both, I love them both, and her plays really were diverse plays. And those were written back
in a different time too.
Yeah.
But they were quite.
She was a lonely voice back then.
And so I think as we think about those plays and what they represented and those statements that were in those plays, I think if Broadway takes a page from Alice Childress, and we've got diversity not only on the stage, but as Toni said, behind the scenes, on the producing side and on the other sides as well, things can definitely change. When we talk about people of color, we're not just talking about Black and white, we're talking about every color under the rainbow. And I think that's also important, I saw.
Only because we haven't mentioned it, we also have to just remember that BIPOC includes the word indigenous. And the indigenous voice is rarely heard. That at least I'm not aware of enough indigenous voices being heard. I know that there's a movement now that people are trying to get more recognition for indigenous voices.
Exactly. Yeah, listen, this year I've seen 3 Asian American productions, right? I think it was the Chinese lady. I forgot the one that one was at the Public Theater. I think that was the Chinese lady. One was actually downtown.
Your theater workshop, Christina Wong.
Yes, actually, right? And that was actually 4. One was on Broadway at MCC. I just blanked on the name. And the other one was downtown at CCC. I think it's Classic Stage Company, something like that.
CSC, yes, Classic Stage Company, yeah.
Exactly.
I'm on camera, sweetie.
And
I got 100 people looking at me, sweetie.
And all 4 were really great. So we're slowly but surely getting there. It's a slow crawl.
Yeah. Is it fair to be optimistic enough that something has moved? Something's moved in the past year and a half. We all want to believe this. We're all afraid to believe it, though. We've been disappointed so many times over the past 30 years. Things happen, people's voices are heard, we protest, and then nothing changes. It seems different this time.
I think it's different this time. There are so many coalitions that are out there right now that are doing the work. And I feel, just as Cherine stated, like BTC, BTU, TISG, TPOC, you know, those are organizations that are really doing the work, and they're not going anywhere. They want change, and they're going forth to making that change. So that's good. They haven't let up steam yet. So yeah, change is happening.
I want to remind the room, by the way, that you can put questions and comments into the chat if you want to comment on anything that we're saying right now. I mean, we're touching on a lot of sore spots. So, but feel free. Also, you can do a virtual hand raise if you go into your reactions. There's a little thing at the bottom of your screen if you're on a laptop and other things. It says reactions next to apps and more and all that. You can do a virtual hand raise. Anything to get you into the conversation. We're happy to invite you in. Want to ask
okay. I would say someone did put in the chat, RK Green, NEC is doing great things. Black Arts West, I'm not sure of them. Cherine, do you know them?
I don't know that one.
Yeah, Black Arts West, the public definitely is doing things. So they're definitely, those organizations are building broader audiences for sure.
We had Marcia Pendleton on another version of this conversation a couple weeks ago. And I had been under the impression that there was some movement in the regional theaters in terms of people of color being in more prominent positions, artistic directors and advisors. And she said not enough. It's not enough. It's not that much. Have you seen?
It's not that much. It always needs to be more, but it's growing. It's growing.
Yeah, I mean, it's growing. There's a little bit more awareness. Whether people are acting on it effectively is another question, but there is awareness. The other, okay, what percentage do Broadway producers rely on tourist patronage? Well, it depends on the show, Donald.
Can a show survive with strictly New York audiences, or like what percentage?
Donald,
yeah.
That is definitely the question that everyone has been asking, and the question that everyone is in need of. I'm going to give you a straight answer. No. We need tourists. Broadway was built that way, or at least was building towards that way, relying on, tourists to come into the country that stay here for 3 weeks, see 5 shows at a time. They see the big musicals, they see the small musicals. When that shutdown happened, it affected, New York in a big, big way. We're trying to get, local folks back. We're trying to get the tri-state area back, but because it was so designed for tourists, we're doing it in reverse, and it's going to be slow to do. And that's what we have experienced throughout all the shows that we've been marketing so far.
And I think that's
Arcade Green gives the 65+ % in terms of tourists.
And I think that was one of the reasons why when those early shows opened, like a Passover or a Chicken and Biscuits, tourists were not flooding New York back in August of 2021 or in October of 2021, right? Tourists started to come back around 2022 slowly as they opened up the borders and you didn't have to, necessarily prove vaccination, etc. So now, they're sort of coming back. But back then in the early days, that's why those shows also struggled, because they had to rely on the New York metropolitan, Jersey, Connecticut, people to come and see the show, and they weren't necessarily doing that.
I want to respond to Donald saying, and then taking a show on the road must have the same problem. No, it's completely different.
It's completely different. We'll say with Hadestown Tour, they're doing extremely well. The tour market is thriving right now. So, and I think just because people don't have to travel into New York, and New York, keeps getting hit with the COVID, even though all the other states are too, but people can stay home and they don't have to travel by plane.
I also want Donald, I want you to understand that with the tour, right, you don't have as many seats to fill, because you're only there for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is. I mean, even if it's a long run, New York depends on audiences coming to fill 1,000 to 1,800 seats, eight days performances a week. Yeah. And it has to be at least a year to even break even. Well, of course, it depends on the finances of the show, but generally, very, very few shows make their money back in less than a year. On the road, everything's financed differently. The budget is a different kind of budget, and they don't have to. And a lot of the tour will consist of going to cities that have an audience that is hungry for this, that wants to see theater. So it's a very different kind of business.
Yeah, it is. And to Tracy's point, yes, they're selling out in San Francisco. Hadestown just had a fantastic run there, and they did very well. So the tour states are doing good.
One more trick question. One more trick question, and then I want to really try to open it up to the room and get people more involved in the conversation. The Tony Awards. A step forward, a disappointing step forward, a hopeful step forward. Was the BIPOC voice given its due in the Tony Awards? There's no right or wrong answer. Just what are your feelings?
So let's okay. We're gonna throw it back on you. In what specific way are you talking about? As far as nominations or as far as wins?
Well, I'm talking about both. I mean, the nominations were hopeful. The wins were okay. I mean, there was representation. It wasn't Broadway so white as in years past. But do you think that all the plays? This is personal opinion. I understand.
Okay.
Do you think that all the plays that were worthy of nominations that came out of the movement and the interest in Black voices? Do you think that they were noticed? So
I'm gonna make my answer very political. The shows that we represented did very well. So we had 38 nominations across our platform. So we were very happy. So
38.
I'm going to bow out with that. Yeah, 38 nominations.
Well,
slackers, you're slackers.
So we did pretty good. So that I'm going to come out of that.
Okay. I'm going to step into a little bit, not too much. But I mean, I will say, I think, that, how can I say this? In terms of the folks who won, and not because we worked on the show, which included actually Paradise Square. We forgot that one too. And then
right, I was just thinking of Paradise Square.
Something is. But I will say that, I mean, listen, when the initial nominations came out and I saw who some of the leads and featured actors and actresses were up against, I thought, okay, well, he's up against, oh God, I just blanked on his name. And she's up against so-and-so, like a Sutton Foster, right, or a Hugh Jackman,
yeah.
And so I initially thought to myself, they're up against the usual people who, the Tony
normally win.
May lean towards and win. Right? So although, in my mind, I'm thinking, no, so-and-so deserves it. So I will say that at the end, when they gave the awards to Best Actor and Best Actress, that they were deserving of that award because of the talent that they put on that stage, right? Miles, when you close your eyes, you really think it's MJ, right? If you close your eyes in that production, because he embodied MJ. Jaquina, that song, Let It Burn, I could play that song every night. I mean, she is a powerhouse. And so, those two people, not because we're working on the show, but I think they really deserved it. There's a few others who I thought.
Yeah, I thought her performance, by the way, was the outstanding performance of the entire show.
Of the
Of the entire show. Astonishing. So there was recognition. There was recognition. I guess it was. So let's give it
Bob, but let's hope that continues. We don't want this to be, as we said earlier, right, a one-off.
Yeah,
right?
That's the problem. That's the thing.
There's a standing joke, right? We elected Barack Obama. It's going to be another 100 years before a person of a diverse nature becomes elected as president. So let's not let that be the Broadway realm where 2022 was like, oh my God, the banner year, all these shows got nominated.
The 1 year.
Not just 1 year, but continue.
Yeah.
But we do know, again, I'm going back to my of the point that Broadway is about, still about money. Producers put up a lot of money, a lot of investors, a lot of money, and they do want to make some type of return if they can. So they don't want to close early. It's all about the successes. So it's bringing the right shows of color to Broadway.
One of the most heartening successes is The Strange Loop, which I know you didn't work on, but we're going to mention it anyway. Because I mean that was a genuinely offbeat. You never would have expected it to be on Broadway like 10 years ago, 20 years. I don't know. Everything's always changing. We all have our preconceptions about what a Broadway show is. That certainly is a unique voice, and I was very happy that got acknowledged. But the leading actor, did he win, or was just the writer one?
That was Miles. That was Miles all day. I mean, nothing against Michael. We love Michael, but we were rooting for Miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I guess it goes back to my original statement way back at the beginning, which is, will the jello stick to the wall? The problem that we're facing is that so many of the shows that opened did not make their money back.
Correct.
Is that going to affect the ability to get things produced by diverse voices in the future, or will people just, understand there are other factors involved here? It's hard to say why. I mean, one of the things is it was shows competing for an audience that was already a slim audience for Broadway. It was also early. It was in the pandemic. There were so many reasons. I just hope it doesn't discourage investors and discourage producers from being bold going forward. Bold. Why should it be bold?
True. Why should it be bold? That's a very, thank you for even making that acknowledgement. I will say this, Bob. When Broadway first opened up, like we said, there was 7 Black playwrights. Never have there been 7 Black playwrights on Broadway at the same time. Did most of those shows close early? Yeah, they did. Would producers take that as a deterrent of doing that again? I hope not. I think the savvy producers would not take that as a deterrent. They want to see the good work. If a play is good, a play is good. If a play recruits, that's great. I think it's all about the art. Secondary, I think it's the money. That's just my opinion. I think going forward, I think plays should be chosen not just because they are Black. They should be chosen because they're good, and they should be on Broadway. Not just because you're trying to check off a box, just because Broadway is coming back and now you want to put the Black plays out there. I want to see a balance. I want to see a balance out there.
I have the challenge even in my organization, because we do a play reading series and we get things submitted all the time. And there are certain expectations about what a good play is. And it usually has to do with white culture. And it's very hard. We need producers of color. We need readers. I need more readers of color so that they can listen to other voices and go, yes, this is a terrific play. There are so many things that need to change for this to become a really equitable business. I guess we're doing what we can, and we're making the awareness is always the first step, but awareness is not always does not always lead to action. I think awareness is leading to action a little bit now, and hopefully it will continue to. And Judith is acknowledging you for saying that the plays should be chosen because they're good. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of people don't recognize that as good because it's not familiar.
Right.
Sometimes familiar is interpreted as being good. And also stories that are about ourselves are often perceived as being good. So getting the culture, getting the audience, getting the white audience to start listening to other voices is one step that needs to be taken. Getting more voices, more diverse voices, actually out there in general. I know that like some indigenous writers and some other writers that are non-traditional writers have a hard time getting produced visibly. I mean, they'll get small productions here, small productions there, but to actually make it into a New York production and get a lot of eyes on it is not a usual thing to happen. I think the culture needs to be educated, and God, with a counterculture going against this so rapidly right now, with the surge of white supremacism and the surge of white fragility and everything else that's going on in this country, there's a lot to do. The country needs to heal. Forget about Broadway and theater and the arts, or don't forget about it, because maybe that's the tool that's going to help.
Yeah, I mean, those discussions, I think, should be conversations amongst the community. You know, people should have these hard conversations about what people want to see, because people want to see a little bit of everything. Some people say people don't want to be preached to. Some people say they don't want to see all the activists, you know, ism on stage. You know, some people want to see a comedy. You know, some people want to see something as far as a drama. That's the beautiful part about Broadway. It's a little bit of everything. So it shouldn't just be one thing that's out there. It should be an eclectic thing that people can choose, but you don't want to lose the small productions with the big productions. So it's all about budget, it's all about money, it's all about who you market it to, who you have money to market to. You know, it's a lot of different factors with Broadway.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, do you have a little bit more time, or because it's 6:32? Are you okay?
Mary had her hand raised.
Okay, because I was going to ask Murray to come to ask her question. Murray.
Okay. Well, I wanted to say something, to share an experience, because this is what we're talking about is the reverse. I made a career change into theater. My first show was Gigi. My second show was Eclipsed. All right. I went to see it. I was going to only be an investor, and I loved it so much I became a producer. And that show, as you know, it was Stephen Bird and Leah Jones Harvey. It was Denai Guerrera. It was the entire creative team was of color. The entire cast was of color. The lead producers were of color. And it was one of the
Murray, how did it feel to be the only white woman at the table?
Well, no, there were a couple of others. I have to tell you what's ironic is it never entered my mind. That's what's ironic. Because I came from the hospitality world where diversity is I'd almost say it's not a non-issue. It almost didn't exist.
Actually, I do want to ask you this. So Stephen and Aaliyah were the lead producers on Eclipse.
Yes.
Do you recall what percentage of the producing team were people of color besides Stephen and Aaliyah?
There were if you ask me a percentage, I'm trying to think of the people at the table. There was a portion, and I can't tell you whether it was 50-50 or not, but it was not, it wasn't one token person, if that's what you're thinking, not at all. But it wasn't, I didn't feel in the majority or minority, because until I'm listening to this, I'm thinking I should share this, because Liesl Tommy, as a director, raised the bar so high for me in terms of what I look for if I'd work with another director. It's unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable. Even to the point where she was, I had gotten her involved with the concierge community because I still work with them to help with the show. And she was going to speak. And I saw Eclipsed to the public. It was heavy duty. You did not laugh. There was no humor whatsoever. I see it opening when we opened on Broadway. And I'm in the ladies' room with her. We're getting ready to go out. And I said, could I ask you a question? Did I miss something at the public? Where was the laugh? I mean, I never laughed. She said, there was none. She said, but what happened was she recognized the fact that the second act was so heavy duty, serious, with guns and everything, that she had to have it change in the first act. And so what they put on Broadway was different than what you saw at the public. And she got that. And the other part was the fact that she had the I love this. She had the cast every night, every time they rehearsed, I should say, they had to go down into the character and tap into a part of the character that they had never tapped into before. And they shared this on public TV at one point. And they complained because it was a lot of work. But what happened was, she said, when you do that, she said, every night you're going, number one, it'll be new for you. but it also be new for the audience. So when they come back, they're not seeing the same old after a period of time. And after that, they loved it. And I watched, thought, she was great. She was just great. And the whole team. And until listening to this, I thought, yeah, I was in the minority, but I sat at the table. That's all I cared about. I'm a marketer, I'm a producer. I wanted to sit at the table, and I did, and I had that opportunity. So
Marie, I will say Eclipse was phenomenal.
Oh.
And we know Stephen and Aaliyah, we love them both. They are definitely, you know, the full-time lead producers, Black lead producers out there. And that was such a phenomenal show, just all it represented on stage and behind the scenes. And I think that has been done maybe once or twice since then. Once or twice. And that's the sad part. Yeah.
The big question is it the subject matter? Is it not black or white?
Absolutely.
I think it's the subject matter that's being chosen, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
ask.
I mean, I do think so. You're not going to get your Eclipse often, but I hope there are more.
There has to be. There has to be.
I have another question I meant to ask both of Toni and Cherine. Do you think that the audience has changed in the past year and a half? Do you think that we have finally been able to get more passionate theater goers from the Black community now that the stories are being told, or is it still a fight?
It's still a fight. It's still a fight. It is still a fight. I think organizations like RealEmN, Walk Tall Girl, we're getting in more people of color. Is there opportunity for more? Yes. Can we go to more boroughs to bring them back? Yes. Do we need more money to do that? Yes. So, you know, only word of mouth is only going to take you so far. We need to be able to go get them and bring them here. We need to make sure that, you know, people of color feel invited into Broadway. A lot of people of color don't feel invited. They think of it still as a white institution that they can't come into because they don't know Broadway. You know, Cherine and I were fortunate enough to grow up as kids being introduced to Broadway. So Broadway wasn't foreign to us. We were used to it. That a lot of kids don't have that. They don't get that at 8, 9, 10 years old. There's some 40-year-olds that haven't been to Broadway yet. So it's, you know, you have to train up a child that it becomes their second nature, that they love it, that they fall in love with it. Instead of going to a concert or getting the latest pair of kicks, they appreciate Broadway for what it's worth.
And as Donald points out, the ticket price is always a problem. It's a problem for everybody. It's not just a problem for the Black audience,
right? But you know, when we started and we started to come back, we coined, a member of our team coined the hashtag Broadway is for you, right? So, you know, that was something that we were trying to definitely push out to everyone that we were marketing to let them know, you know what, this is not a foreign thing. You know, Broadway is for you and you are welcome to come to Broadway. That's number one, right? Because I think that certainly is important. What I'm also seeing is, you know, we were fortunate enough that the shows that we did work on, you know, gave us the advertising dollars that we needed. Not everything, but at least we got some, where they advertise more than probably what they would normally do. You know, when I started back in the Color Purple days, I said, listen, you can't just put one ad in the Amsterdam News and think that's gonna, you know, turn the corner. That doesn't work with our community. They need to see repetition, 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 right? And so, you know, these shows stepped up, I will say, and placed a number of ads over a period of time, you know, in various papers and publications that are read by our community. And so they're not just seeing one ad, they're seeing it every week or every other week. And they're like, oh, okay, you know what, maybe I should go, you know, check out XYZ show, right?
Maybe I should go. Hashtag maybe I should go.
Hashtag, that's cute.
Yeah. You know, but to the person who dropped the note in the box about the ticket price and to what the next thing is, and I don't know if this comes from whether it's the show themselves or maybe some sort of a mandate from the Broadway League, I don't know. But in order to bring students to see a show, the price cannot be prohibitive, right? Because even with the DOE, on the side, I do some work with the DOE. They don't have the budget to spend $69 or $79 or even $49 to bring a group of kids to see a show, right? And so, somehow, whether that's something from the theater owners, the producers, the Broadway League, something, there needs to be some sort of a thing where X amount of seats are set aside for students at a reasonable rate that they can come, whether they're coming through their school or whether they're coming through their parent. I know it's all about the dollars and they want to make back their money. We understand all that, but to prepare and prep the next generation of Broadway goers, they need to be introduced to theater, and they cannot do that if the ticket price is $69, $79, $99. That is unrealistic. So somehow the prices
this would be a good conversation with corporate sponsors to have somebody.
That's what I was going to say, Bob. So Cherine, to your point, some shows have worked that out. They have set aside, subsidized seats. They have underwriters. They have more educational component to it. So we would love to see more of that. And I would definitely love to see BIPOC folks that really, people of means that really come in and underwrite that for people of color. I think that would be a great initiative, but we need time to find those folks, to make that into fruition. One, when they hire firms like RealEmN or Walk Tall Girl or any firms of color, we would love to come aboard early. So when we have these conversations, when we're talking about ticket prices, we can introduce that to the show and hopefully try to work that out. So that is things that we could do, but you just need time to do it.
Well, we've covered a lot, and it's now 6:42. So I'm gonna suggest that we, I'm gonna thank you both, Toni and Cherine. I thought it was a very. Where you going? I'll mute the person that's.
Okay.
So Toni and Cherine, I want to thank you. I think it's an important conversation that we have to keep having.
Yeah.
If for no other reason, so that we don't forget about it in 6 months.
Yeah. True.
We just have to keep the awareness going, and hopefully have change happen a little bit more than it has in the past, and maybe it'll stick, and maybe we'll have some hope for the future. I say this with the country in a complete mess, but in our little world of Broadway, in our little world of the arts, not even Broadway, but the arts in general, hopefully we have the ability to listen to other voices and to help other people understand experiences outside of what they're used to. So hopefully there's hope. Hopefully there's hope.
Hopefully there's hope. There's hope.
I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna thank my viewers out there as well for being with us. You're missing some great information, and I should be vocalizing some of the things that are in the chat right now. So you should come join us on Fridays at 5 o'clock. Email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. Be part of the community, be part of the conversation. Come join us. Thank you for being with us. And here comes the pitch. We do this for free. We do this for free, but and we're absolutely, our hearts welcome you. Absolutely, you can come and be with us. If you can't afford it, we want you to still be part of the community. If you can afford to help us and support us, we've got bills to pay. What can I tell you? We do. And so you can go to TrueDonate, trudonate.com. That's trudonate.com, and give us a little love, okay? And join us next week. Next week we're going to have another difficult conversation. Well, no. Next week it's going to be a little easier. Next week is the theater film crossover. We're going to talk about the differences in development and financing between theater and film. Something uncontroversial, easy to talk about. It's a dollars and cents conversation to the most part, and we're going to have attorney Gordon Firemark. Friday July 22nd. We do have politics and art scheduled, integrating the political and the personal with Chio Say, who's an American politician and activist. He's the youngest council member ever elected to New York, the New York City Council. He's going to be an interesting guy. We'll also have Amy Todorov from the League of Independent Theaters, and possibly one other activist, because we want to talk about how you balance activism and art. That's it, everybody. I hope to see you next week, in 2 weeks, and all the weeks to come. We're here every week. Please be with us. Thank you.